Okay, so we have been looking at creative thinking or productive thinking and its relation to research, and we were discussing this critical issue whether creativity is a gift or a skill. So I would like to quote a few famous people here. Is that so? Peter Medawar is a Nobel laureate in physiology and medicine in 1960. He has also written a very nice books about as a guide to researchers, a very famous book by Peter Medawar on guide to those who are getting into novices in the research. So he says that the creativity is beyond analysis is a romantic illusion. So that creativity, in other words, the creativity is a gift, is only a myth created by popular literature and newspapers and so on, and we must outgrow that. So which means you have to understand that it is not something like a gift. It is something that can be nurtured and developed. Okay, so it can be developed by practice. You need a conscious application of certain things and not just vagaries of inspiration. So it's not that you have to sit and get inspired to do research. All that is fine to tell a story. You can nurture, you can actually develop creative abilities. So what it matters most is perseverance, and passionate pursuit of an area. Okay, so these two things are very, very critical. So it's matter of organizing basic skills, and it is what is most important is your motivation. So it's not that it is. So I'm not. So the things that I'm saying here are not from my own experience. This is what some of the famous even people who have been doing research in psychology have also asserted this. Here I am quoting Catherine Morris Cox Miles. So she was a very well-known American psychologist, and she is known for her work on intelligence and genius. She actually studied this topic of being creative and intelligent very thoroughly. She looked at 301 geniuses born between 1450 and 1850, and there is a very famous book which is authored by her. I am quoting some of the important conclusions from her book. This book is available on the net in case you are interested. It's must be out of print, but scanned copy is available. You can read pages from this book. All equally intelligent children do not, as adults, achieve equal eminence. Everyone who is intelligent doesn't become eminent, because the youth who achieve eminence are characterized by not only by high intellectual traits but also by persistence of motive. What she noticed by studying 300 geniuses is that what matters most is persistence of motive and effort, and confidence in their abilities, and general strength or force of character. So this is what she singles out as what is needed for. So she also says that seriousness of purpose is extremely important. Okay, that is high level of motivation, and these people who have been geniuses, okay, it's not they were above intelligent, or even probably some of them were very intelligent, but what mattered most was indomitable persistence. They were at it all the time, and that's what mattered most. Passionate pursuit is the word I would use. That's what mattered most. Okay, so that's what makes the creative genius. So it is persistence, perseverance. It's hard work. It's not some gift which is coming from. So innovation. So there's also a famous saying, I don't remember, that the innovation strikes to the person, to a prepared mind. Okay, so you have to keep working, you have to keep struggling, you have to keep thinking about a problem, and then a new idea will strike. the Cox concludes that high but not highest intelligence. You need high intelligence, okay, but not the highest intelligence. So high intelligence combined with greatest degree of persistence. So just remember this word, will achieve greater eminence than the highest degree of intelligence and somewhat less persistence. If you are very intelligent, but if you are not persistent, okay, if you don't have perseverance, the most important thing in research is perseverance. Okay, so you have to be at it. You don't have to give up. You should not give up. You should keep trying different ideas. Then ideas slowly start flowing. Okay, so this is very, very important. Well, this is I will not. We don't have time to do this activity, but this is a activity to cut this square piece of paper into 5 equal squares. Okay, think about this. We will not spend time on this. Okay, but now using this, how will you solve this problem? 5 equal squares. Can you cut this piece of paper into 5 equal squares? You do not have a scale with you. You don't have a scale with you. You should fold. You can fold. You can cut and rearrange. No. 5 equal. 5 equal. Okay. Now, yeah, they should be squares. Prove that. Not possible. Okay. So either you mathematically prove that it is not possible. Okay. So now, what I want to illustrate, I want to use this particular example to illustrate something else. I want to show that how this particular thing, what will you use here? How will you go about, if at all you were to start thinking, what will you start thinking about? Huh? How will you approach the problem? What will first come to your mind? I want to solve this problem. Which result you will use? Abstract result. Can I use Pythagoras theorem? Something that was taught to you in grade 4. You probably have to use Pythagoras theorem. Okay. So if I want to set up a question, okay, about Pythagoras theorem, one way to say is that recollect Pythagoras theorem. That is test of memory. Okay. I could frame the question and say that, make your life easy by saying that, well, using Pythagoras theorem, okay, cut this square into 5 equal squares. So I am giving you a hint. It is application. So you have been taught Pythagoras theorem, you have been asked to apply Pythagoras theorem to solve this problem. Okay. So this is, so just to illustrate these levels of thinking, what would be the next level of thinking? I would say that, divide a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares and no hint is given about Pythagoras theorem. Okay. So this requires critical thinking. You need to connect what you have learned from your school, college, whatever, and connect a Pythagoras theorem with this problem. Okay. And say that I will use Pythagoras theorem to solve this problem, and then try to, and the next level is creative thinking, okay, is where formulate a question. So formulate a question for testing levels of thinking. So that is one more level next, okay, that is test of a creativity. Okay. See, one problem, okay, that can be twisted in different ways. Okay, coming up with this question requires creativity. Okay, then saying that now, use Pythagoras theorem to solve this problem is application. You are applying. You have taught Pythagoras theorem, you are asking them to apply this Pythagoras theorem in this context. You are already given the hint. Okay, here you are not given the hint. You just say that this is the problem. You can use whatever you have learnt in geometry. Okay, you should think of Pythagoras theorem and start. Okay, so this requires some critical thinking. Well, and coming up with a question like this requires creative thinking. Okay, which can illustrate multiple levels of. Okay, so what is most important? Okay, Einstein states that one of the most important thing is the problem formulation. It's much more important than solving the problem, because once you formulate the problem, you can use some existing method to solve the problem. Okay. So what he says is that, look, the mere formulation of a problem is far more essential than its solution, which may be merely a matter of mathematical or experimental skills. Once you formulate the problem, then solving it requires certain techniques which are probably available. You might do a mix and match and solve those techniques. Formulation is very important. To raise new questions, new possibilities, to regard old problems from a new angle. Remember these keywords. This is what gives rise to new topics. Okay. Either you raise a new question. Okay. This you might do after having certain practice of doing research. Initially, your research might be looking at a old problem from a new angle. Okay. Using a new method, using a new approach, so that's what gives rise to. But this requires creative imagination, and that's what really makes advance of the science. Okay, so let's look at what is creativity. Oxford Dictionary meaning is that use of imagination or original ideas to create something. So I'm trying to, so right now I'm giving you very vague definitions, but I'm going to go and give you some clues as to how to develop your own creative thinking and how to help your students to develop their creative thinking. Okay, because both are important to do research. Okay. Again, examples would be, as far as possible, I'll try to give examples which will cut across disciplines and. Okay, so creativity is defined as tendency to generate or recognize ideas, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, communicating with others, and entertaining ourselves and others. In order to be creative, you need to be able to view things in new ways. Very, very important. Okay, and from a different perspective. So many times you are looking at the same thing, but from a completely different perspective. Okay, and this is where merging of ideas, things take. So ability to take a fresh look, keep aside whatever has been taught to you at objects or situations, but this is enriched by the past experience. So it's not that you are completely doing it new. Okay, every great genius also has been reading literature, has been looking at how others thought about the problem, and they learned from it, and then they came up with a new solution. Okay, they either merged, mixed, whatever. Okay, so it is not that without any of these inputs, without the past, the things are without knowing about what has been done in the past, you can just sit in one closed room and the scientific method is what is at the play, and what matters most in the scientific method is communication. It's discussions, criticism, and this may not happen face to face. It happens through journals, conferences, indirectly through reading reports. So you are posting a report, somebody is reading that report, somebody is using and criticizing, making an advance above what you have done, and so on. So it's a kind of a forum through which it occurs. So enriched by past experiences is very, very important. So we have innate ability to do creative thinking. This example I keep repeating in my every course, that did you ever learn your mother tongue going through some classes? Never. We were able to create sentences, we were able to use words that we never probably knew. Like, just try to recollect, when did you use the word responsibility for the first time? Maybe in your grade 7, grade 8, I am responsible for this. Did you understand what was responsibility when you first used it? No. Okay, so the meaning grows, you start using it. Okay, and then when you learn language, what is most important is that you are not scared of making mistakes. Okay, that is critical. Okay, So because we don't have fear of failure, okay, we don't mind making mistakes. We are very creative when we are not scared of making, mistakes. So that you must have seen. Children are often, they come up with surprises. Okay, so because they are not scared of making mistakes. So what is literature review? Okay, literature review is trying to learn about a particular problem. The way we try to learn a language. Okay, way we try to learn a language, it is trying to learn from tracing a particular problem, its history, and then seeing how people thought about this problem, what were the different ways of looking at this, and now can I twist, can I change, can I modify, if I have interacted with some other domain, can I take those ideas and mix them here? Okay, that is what is so that is what is involved in critical review of the literature, that we are observing patterns of thinking and then using those patterns to take the area forward. Okay, if we can learn language just looking at patterns, we have innate ability to look at patterns. So if we can do this, we can certainly do this in our area. Okay, so this pattern recognition and then trying to extend those patterns is what is happening when you are doing literature review. Okay, so Professor Sundar was telling that you should use your period of 2-3 years to read a lot, actually for looking at patterns, in what way the topic is developing. I want to give examples, again very simple examples that cut across disciplines. Okay, because whenever I have given these lectures on research, it's for students of all disciplines. The way I would do this probably just for chemical engineering or control engineering would be different. But the point that I want to stress here is different. It's how to look at a problem from different viewpoints. Okay, this is an old problem. Now probably I don't know whether research is still going on in this area. Probably it is still going on in this area. Some people in maths would be able to tell me. But this is an old problem. What is the value of pi? Yeah, and then I'll tell you that how ingeniously people have looked at the same problem. There are so many solutions of finding value of pi. Okay, and research is about looking at this problem from many viewpoints. Okay, recently somewhere I read a news that someone has come up with a way of constructing pi up to some 10,000 decimal or whatever. So I think there are some people still working on value of pi. Okay, so okay, what was the first solution to this? Okay, this is first solution was by Archimedes or parallelly by Aryabhatta. So they estimated the value of pi by enclosing it between two polygons. You can imagine, see the area of circle, a very crude approximation would be half of, you can say, area of the inscribing polygon and area of this outside polygon. You take half of that, because this is somewhere in between. This circle is between this polygon and this polygon. Yeah, and using that, can you estimate pi? If you estimate pi using that, okay, you can get a value of pi which comes close to 3.23 using six-sided polygons. What Aryabhatta and Archimedes did was they decided to extend this to higher number of, say they extended this to 12, 24 sides, 96 sides, and you can have an inscribing polygon and a superscribing. What is it called? Superscribing. A circumscribing polygon. Yeah. So and Archimedes finally came up with this number. We use this number, right? 22/7. Yeah. It has been arrived at using this idea of a polygon inside and a polygon outside. Okay, and you go on increasing the number of sides of the polygon. At the limit, you can see that the concept of limit that time didn't exist, but you can see that as the side becomes close to 0, what you will get is the circle. Yeah. So actually this idea also brings in something different from the viewpoint of calculus. But okay, let's leave that aside. So this is a very accurate estimate of the. So what is important is that he viewed the circle as a limit of ever increasing number of sides of regular polygon. So this actually gave a different viewpoint altogether. Okay, at looking at finding out area of a enclosed surface, area of an enclosed curve inside. Okay, have you? Any one of you has worked on Monte Carlo? Yeah? Can you use Monte Carlo to find out pi? How? Tell me. What will you do? What is Monte Carlo? Most probable? Monte Carlo is most probable configuration. Not exactly. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I know a slightly different definition. Anybody else can think of how will you use Monte Carlo? What is Monte Carlo? So you actually create samples, okay, and then from the samples you try to find out, using sampling, using statistics, using probability statistics, you try to find out. Okay, so what we know is that area of a circle is nothing but. Can we say that the area of the unit circle at 0, 0, suppose this is 0, 0, okay, and divided by the area of the square, circumscribing square, will it be pi by 4? Yeah? Everyone agrees? A simple calculation. Yeah? It will be pi by 4. So what I am going to do now, okay, play a game. Okay, I am going to take a dart. You know what is a dart? Have you played this game of dart? Yeah. So this is a board. Assume that this is a dart board, and I am going to throw darts. Okay. So if I throw a dart from a distance, a dart can land here, here, here. There is equal probability that dart will land anywhere. I am going to generate darts that can land themselves anywhere on this circle. Okay, and then what I am going to do is count the number of darts that are inside the circle and total number of darts. Okay, if I do that, okay, the ratio of these numbers, okay, ratio of these numbers will. So when I throw a dart, it is equally likely to land anywhere. What is a dart? If not dart, you think of an arrow. Okay, I'm going to play a game with arrows. Okay, my arrow, I'm going to go and keep throwing arrows on this. They will land somewhere. Okay, and let's assume that it will land anywhere. Anywhere. Okay, I'm not necessarily worried about putting it here. Okay, it can. My only concern is it should land on the board. Okay, if I play this game, this is what happens. Okay, this was a method used for this one of the methods used to illustrate Monte Carlo simulations. Okay, so what we have done here is that we have thrown darts. Okay, I have written a simple computer program to generate a random number that is uniformly distributed along x and along y. It is like a dart. Whenever I get a random number, I put a x there. Okay, if it lands, if the dart lands inside, it is blue. If it is landing outside, it is red. Okay, now to find value of pi, what we have to do is to count the number of darts inside versus total number of darts. Yeah, I get not a bad estimate. Yeah, if you throw more darts, you can go to a closer and closer value. Okay, so you might think that, okay, first we thought from the calculus viewpoint and inscribing polygon. Now this is completely different. Throwing darts, it's a different way of looking at the same problem. Okay, different way of looking at the same problem. A third way of looking at the same problem. You will not imagine that. Okay, so this is again known as, you can go and look onto the net. This is called as Buffon's needle experiment. Okay, this Buffon was a French aristocrat, one of those lords who had lots of estate, and one of his pastime was maths. Okay. Now this problem arose like this, that he had a big hall, and in that hall there were tiles like this with crisscross. So he was smoking a cigar and his cigar fell on the ground. So he started thinking that if I randomly throw a cigar, okay, what is the probability that it will land on a horizontal line? See, there are horizontal lines, okay, and probably the tiles were small as the size of a cigar, okay, slightly bigger than size of a cigar. So if I throw a cigar, it can land inside, okay, or it can land on a, okay. So what is the probability that so you can do this, you can play this game, okay, you can draw lines, okay, you can ask your students to play this game, just throw matchsticks, okay. Now the question is, how many matchsticks will actually cross these lines and how many matchsticks will not cross the lines? You can write the equations and show that the number of matchsticks, the ratio of number of matchsticks that will fall on the line, okay, and to the total number of matchsticks thrown is proportional to pi by 4, okay. So you can, the maths is not that difficult, okay. So you can, if you are curious, you can go back and look at that. So this is again a random based experiment, random sampling based experiment, where you are throwing, but completely different way of thinking, okay. And this is one of the methods by which pi can be discovered. So we looked at 3 methods. There are many methods. Okay. Now, can somebody from physics tell me, can you use some experiment from physics to estimate pi? Triangle? But right angle triangle, you'll have to create a 3D something, no? You can't create a 2D thing. So how will that help you to find out pi? Volume will be related to pi. Why? You are not, you're a good guess, I would say. Volume of something can be used. Okay, I'll give you this solution. But what I want you to think about is that a simple problem like pi, finding value of pi, okay, can be looked upon by so many ways, okay, so many ways that it is amazing to see how that can be done. So here is an experiment, okay. You take a metal sheet of uniform thickness, okay, cut a circle of radius of 1 meter. Yeah, cut a circle of radius of 1 meter. Cut a square sheet of sides equal to 2 meters. See, what I am telling you is this: go to this, cut a circle of radius of 1 meter, cut another sheet of 2 meters. Okay. Now, ratio of the weights, you weigh this circular piece, you weigh the square piece. Ratio of the weights, should it be equal to pi by 4? Density is same. Density is constant. Okay. Here you are not throwing darts. You are not doing calculus. You are doing physics. Okay, you are weighing two bodies and saying ratio of this weight is equal to pi by 4. Yeah. So accuracy of your experiment estimate will depend upon how good is your weighing balance. Okay, so that will decide how good is your estimate of pi. But this is a way of estimating pi. So same problem being looked at from a different viewpoint by different people. Okay, you want to know more? There is a nice book called a pi biography of the world's most famous number. Okay, we will be sharing all the slides in this workshop with you. So you can look at this book and okay. So how do you develop creative thinking? So it's actually learning to view or teaching your students to view a problem from a multiple viewpoints. If you teach your students, or if you learn to view a problem from different viewpoints, you will start developing your creative thinking. Okay, so you should keep this in mind. Well, how this particular thing is being viewed differently, that will help. Okay, I think a very nice quote by Aurobindo. Education is not about learning diverse subjects, but about learning diverse ways to the same subject. Okay, so this is just a. Now I want to go more now into a little bit of maths, but this maths is something that almost every discipline except English, English faculty here. Yeah, please excuse me, for two of you are there. Yeah, you will still appreciate, but I hope. But regression, line fitting, fitting a line, fitting a curve fitting is something that every engineer, every physicist, mathematicians say if they are statistics, they will be doing this. Yeah. When I teach regression to my students, what I do is I start by saying that, well, from the viewpoint of physics, we have this. I want to model dependence of resistance versus temperature. All of you know dependence of resistance versus temperature. Yeah. The second thing, specific heat versus temperature may not be known to you, but resistance versus temperature everyone knows. Yeah, there is a linear relationship between. We obtain these parameters A and B through curve fitting. We generate data for resistance versus temperature, and we estimate. Yeah, do you have something to share? No, say it. It will be of use. Yeah. No, what you were discussing? Anything, but I'm not. I would encourage discussion. If there is something, so, no. Okay. Bolo. Yeah. Yes. Yes, one can write a computer code to do that. One can write a computer code to the Monte Carlo which I showed. I have done simulations, computer code to do that. Yeah. Okay. So now let's look at this problem. So one part of it, one way of looking at is the physics problem where if you increase temperature, resistance, increases or decreases or whatever is the relationship that particular material has. Now let's look at the problem of line fitting. This is a problem which everyone is concerned about. Okay. Now we have a situation here where we have what we do is typically we collect data. How do you fit this line? How do you get this A and B parameters? We actually collect data for resistance and for temperature, okay, and then we fit a line. Okay. Now what happens is when you do this, so you have collecting in general there is some dependent variable y and there is some independent variable. So let us call this y equal to a plus bx. Okay, we want to fit a plus bx. We collect data y1, x1, y2, x2. Do you do this? How many unknowns are there? 2 unknowns are there. So how many data points we need? 2. But we don't do using 2. What we do? we do least square fitting. Why? Why do we do least square fitting? To get the, so there are two unknowns and two, are there two unknowns or there are more unknowns which you haven't seen? Okay, now let me complete the problem. Okay, actually remember I have written here approximately equal to, it is not equal to, this is an approximate relationship, this is not exact relationship. Huh? So actually if you want to close and write an equation, you have to introduce one more variable here. Okay, you have to introduce one more variable. So this variable is error. This error could be coming out of multiple things. Error could be coming out of error in measurement of y, resistance you are measuring, you have made a mistake in measuring resistance. This error could come because this particular equation itself is approximate. So there is an error coming out of approximation. Okay, error coming out of approximation. There are multiple sources for error, but once you have this error, okay, there are additional unknowns. Okay, V1 to Vn. Okay, if I collect n data points, if I measure resistance at n different temperatures, okay, at each time there is an error committed which I don't know. Okay, so actually the number of unknowns are n errors and 2 parameters. So there are n plus 2 unknowns. How many equations we have? N equations. Okay, so now we have trouble because we have more unknowns and less equations. Whatever you do, you collect more measurements, is this situation going to change? It's not going to change. Okay, so there are, this is simple linear equations. There are linear equations, yeah, linear equations. There are infinite possible solutions for this particular problem. Okay, now, so what we do is we solve this problem by optimization. We do what is called a least square solution. Okay, now, so I teach them least square solution. So I tell them that, well, let's look at a least square estimate of parameters a and b. So this is where what you do is you actually write these equations. Write these equations. I'm going to give you one more viewpoint. Least square solution says that minimize sum of the square of errors, sum of the square of v1 to vn, okay, with respect to a and b. And that is a least square solution. Okay, I'm going to give you a different viewpoint to this particular problem. The same problem can be viewed in a different viewpoint. Okay, I'm going to write this as a matrix equation. Yeah, everyone comfortable with this except my two friends from English? Yeah, you are also comfortable? Okay, so I'm just writing this as a matrix equation. Y1 to Yn, these are temperature measurements. X1 to Xn, sorry, Y1 to Yn are resistance measurement, these are temperature measurements, these are unknown errors, and these are multiplying coefficients A and B. Okay, now, algebraic way of solving the problem, algebraic viewpoint. Okay, I write this Vi equal to Yi minus this, and then, you know, I define some objective function, scalar objective function, and I find the optimum, maximum or a minimum by solving these two necessary conditions for optimality. Okay, so if I do that, you know, I want to minimize sum of the square of errors with respect to A and with respect to B. If I do that, I get the solution for this. Okay, this is what if you go to Excel and say fit a curve, it will do this for you, and it will give you A and B least square estimates. So I can get least square estimates. This is algebraic way of solving the problem. Algebraic way of solving the problem. Okay, I can just give a geometric viewpoint to the same problem. Okay, so I can tell them that, look, actually, you know, this equation is, what this equation is saying is that this column into A and this column into B. Yeah, this equation is actually A into this column and B into this column. It's a linear combination of two columns. It's linear combination of two columns. Okay, so linear combination of two columns So y, if you call this y hat, which is a times theta, then this is linear combination of these two columns. Okay. Again, I think here only the maths faculty might be comfortable. Okay. How many are there from maths department? Yeah. And probably electrical. Electrical students do linear algebra? Yeah. What is the column space of a matrix? Space generated by what columns of? Linear combination of all possible linear combinations of the columns is called a linear. Okay. So I can give a twist and say that, well, actually this y bar lies in the column space of matrix A, different geometric viewpoint to the same problem. Okay. And then this is a vector which is outside the column space. Okay, this is a vector which is outside the column space, and you want to find out a projection of y onto the column space and perpendicular to the column space. So you can actually leave this particular thing aside. I will get back to something that you know from your school. You probably have seen this diagram. You have probably seen this diagram. Okay, in a different viewpoint. If I give you a stick like this. Okay, and if I ask you what is the shortest distance of this point from this plane, what do you do? Rub a perpendicular. Okay, this is the shortest distance point. Okay, least square solution can be related to this geometric viewpoint. Okay, very nice book by Gilbert Strang. Okay, so if this is the point, what is the shortest distance of, what is the point on the plane which is at the shortest distance from this point? Okay, just drop a perpendicular from that. Okay, and the point where it hits, that is a point where this point is nothing but the least square solution that you get by doing all this algebra. Okay, this is, what is this giving you? What is all this algebra of, or finding out this minimum is giving you, is actually geometrically identical to what you have learned in school, finding out the shortest distance of a point from a plane. Okay, this is a geometric view of looking at the problem of regression, line fitting. Line fitting is something all of us know, right? I am just looking at it from a different perspective. Okay, this is second perspective. Okay, don't worry if you don't understand the algebra. What is important here is that one way is to solve the problem just using some manipulations. The second way is to look at it as a through geometric concept. Okay, now are there, how many of you have done signals and systems? Yeah? So can you view this problem from a statistical viewpoint? Are there statisticians in this room? Yeah? You can reinterpret the entire problem. Okay, you can reinterpret this problem from the viewpoint. So a very good, very nice interpretation of least squares from a geometric viewpoint you will find in this book, Gilbert Strang, and its applications. If you are interested in knowing about the same problem, okay, this is a very fundamental problem because it's model fitting into data. The simplest model one can think of is line. Yeah, one can fit a curve, one can fit a polynomial, one can fit a differential equation, one can fit a partial differential equation. Okay, one can have very complex models fitting. Okay, so this problem can be viewed from multiple viewpoints. Okay, you can view it from viewpoint of statistics and estimation theory. Okay, that will, you can refer to this book on linear regression, generalized models in engineering applications. You will find completely different viewpoint of looking at line fitting. Okay, or model fitting for that matter, parameter fitting. All this maximum likelihood estimation, Bayesian estimation, plethora of things. There are books can be written on this. Okay. So one simple problem can be viewed from so many different viewpoints, and research is about this. And how do you nurture research attitude in the students? By teaching them to look at the same problem from multiple viewpoints, and you learn to look at the same problem from the multiple viewpoints. That is one of the main things that is needed for doing research. The second thing that is very, very critical in research. So one prescription, if I wanted to give you, is to to do this is to learn the way you nurture, your creative abilities, is to look how people have looked at the same problem from different viewpoints. Okay, that's what you start looking for. The second thing is analogy. Okay, analogies can be very effective, and teaching using analogies can be very effective. When you ask your student to think about a problem, giving analogies, ask them to think using analogies will be very useful in developing cross-discipline thinking. Okay, it allows you to transfer an existing idea, model, theory from one domain to solve the problem in the other domain. Okay, that's what is famous examples are Nagaoka's model. What is Nagaoka's model? Analogy, right? Analogy of planetary system used to develop a model for. Okay, he had never seen how the atom looks like. He just used analogy to come up with a model that was different. Okay, so other famous example in the literature is electromagnetic waves and matter waves. Okay, so if you read what so it was beginning of the 20th century, it was known that Maxwell's equations is way of looking at the light, and photons or the particle viewpoint of light also explains many properties of light. And this was established by Max Planck and later by Einstein. So in 1924, de Broglie proposed this that electrons also have wave-like properties. Okay, so electron was viewed as a particle, or we still view it as a particle, but this was a completely different model for electron, wave model. Okay, and Schrodinger published the matter wave analog of Maxwell's equation. Okay, so this discovery occurred by use of analogy. Okay, and then this is not something which is just a guess, but this is what de Broglie says, that when I conceived the first basic idea of wave mechanics in 1923-34, I was guided by the aim to perform a real physical synthesis valid for all particles of coexistence of wave and corpuscular aspect that Einstein had introduced for photons in his theory of light of quanta. So analogical thinking, is very, very critical. Okay, you could do it by introducing in your teaching. You could do it by looking for analogies around you, and that's how you could develop your own creative thinking. Okay, so these are very, very excellent examples, but I want to give an example from my course. Okay, forget about those famous examples. Let's look at your course. Okay, now this is again an example from chemical engineering. What we do is, we are teaching this heat transfer in a tube. Okay, so simple problem. Let's say there is water flowing outside the tube, and inside the tube steam is flowing, and there is a tube in between. How does the heat transfer occur from here to here, from bulk of say water to the tube, and from tube to inside the tube, and whatever, or steam to water, other way around. So how it happens? Okay, so what we do is we use analogy of circuits, because this is something is known to the student from grade 10 or grade 12. I think grade 10 nowadays, grade 10, grade 11, this is known to the student, currents, resistance. Okay, and then we actually show that, well, what is the analogy between the heat flow and the resistance for heat? Okay, the model used for the way used to model the heat flow and the way used to model currents and resistances is not different. Okay, if you develop this analogical thinking in your courses, okay, that will help you to grow as a researcher. That will help the students, okay, to think using analogies. That will be useful, and that is very, very critical when it comes to defining research problems. Okay, so what I would say is that some prescriptions for developing research ideas. Okay, coming up with research problem, you should nurture open and receptive attitude, have an open mind, You should listen to the alternate viewpoint. You should not say that only my viewpoint is correct. Okay, and ideas, even though they may not match with your ideas and beliefs, this is very, very important. Okay, I'm giving you general prescriptions for coming up with new ideas, but these principles do help. Okay, these principles do help. Acknowledge the areas of common ground with those hold alternate beliefs. Okay, it is not that only one viewpoint is correct. Okay, it is not that I cannot say that, well, least square means, okay, it has to be with column space and projections. No, somebody, a statistician, will give me a completely different viewpoint using Gaussian distribution, maximum likelihood function, and it gives rise to completely different set of theories. Okay, and completely different applications. Then so both are correct. Both are correct. Okay, which is important. When you are a researcher, you should acknowledge that yes, that is also probably a correct viewpoint. Okay, so acknowledge the areas that are common. Okay, learn to have a dialogue with somebody holding opposite views. You should not shut off. You should be able to logically have a dialogue with somebody who doesn't agree with, he or she doesn't agree with you, without attacking the opponent's view. It's very, very important. Okay, it's very important that you create opportunities for cross fertilization. The way you could do this is to form journal clubs. The way we do it in IIT Bombay is that within our group, within our research groups, we have journal club. So students from the faculty, students, we decide that we'll be reading one paper in a semester. Okay, and each one of us will come and present that paper to the remaining group. Okay, so if there are 5 to 10 people, if you do it once in a fortnight or once in a week, then your responsibility in 6 months is one paper, which is not a big deal. Okay, but then this way you get to listen to multiple ideas. Okay, so if you have, let's say, civil engineering, there are 5 people working in structural engineering, form a group, informal group. Okay, you present a paper, you invite students to come and listen to it. They will ask some question. Okay, now in attempt to explain that question, you will start learning more. Okay, so this is very, very important. So you have to create opportunities for cross fertilization of ideas. Okay, set aside some time for, very, very important. Many people think that if I have a research idea, I should close the door. Somebody will steal it. Okay, it is never like that. Okay, it grows if you interact, you teach. Okay, solve doubts, answer questions. Okay, so I tell in my classes, I tell my students that please put me in corner. Unless you put me in corner, I am not going to learn. Okay, if I am not able to answer your question, I am forced to go back and look at my understanding. I am forced to go back to look at and read more and come back and explain. Okay, so your job as a student is to ask a question which will make me difficult. You should not, you should encourage people who are asking difficult questions rather than, that is how you will. Okay, so ask them, try to create a atmosphere where you have weekly meetings. So if you have 4 MTech students working with you, ask them to come and present every week for 5 minutes. Present what you did in last week. Okay, group meetings. Many of you must have attended group meetings in your respective colleges. So that is very, very important. You can start journal clubs. Okay, you should try to write down your ideas frequently. Okay, and intermittently. You should communicate as a paper. That writing, believe me, when I began my career as a researcher, I never thought that writing is so important. But actually, writing is a way of, is a creative act. When you start writing, okay, when you start putting something on a paper in a logical order, many ideas develop. Okay, after guiding, let's say I have guided 16, 17 PhDs by now, I have found that the most fertile time, okay, for generating ideas is when we finally write the paper or when we finally write the thesis. When we write the thesis, we suddenly start, when you start writing, you start seeing all the gaps. And then you know where to fill the gap. Okay, and then you say, okay, by now abhi 5 saal beet gaya, kya kare? But I could have done this, and then that gives rise to the next problem. Okay, so writing down is very, very important. You should intermittently write down your work, submit it as for conferences. Okay, so in summary, I would like to stress this, that as per psychology, creative thinking is a skill that can be developed through practice. Okay, it is matter of practice. It is not some stroke of genius or something like that. Okay, now here I am discounting some 1 out of 1 lakh who are probably really genius, but the remaining, it is not that. It is hard work. Okay, so it is not some stroke of genius for. So there are examples like, I think Gauss is supposed to be child prodigy, and then he solved some problems at the age of 7 and something at the age of 9. So those things, those 1 out of 1 in the history of mankind, you leave that aside. But others have done it by perseverance. Requires strong motivation, and creativity is at the is the foundation of developing new ideas for research. So it's not that you need some very great intelligence to do it. Okay, so learning about different ways to solve a problem and visualization of the world in terms of analogies. Okay, so developing analogies or developing analogical thinking, and trying to look at one thing through multiple viewpoints are the 2 important things that you need to nurture to develop creativity. Okay, I would recommend you can go to this web page, this website. Okay, NMICT. This particular lecture I have enhanced what Professor Karmalkar delivered in this introduction to research methodology. This is a full course available, and it's you can just go click and view the videos. Okay, it talks about all facets of research. It's about 6-7 day course. Okay, must be I think about more than 60-70 hours of recording on different facets of research. Okay, intellectual property, all kinds of things, industrial interactions. Now, within the short period of time that we have been given, it's not possible to talk about everything. We chose what we think are the most important things. Okay, you can get more looking at this videos at this point. Okay, so at this point, if there are any questions, I would like to take if there are any questions. Yeah. Do you have anything that we could discuss?